Hello, this is Margaret Betty from the University of Sewing at the Tailored Fit. For those of you who don't know me, we have an alteration and tailoring business, and I've made custom sewing part of that business for years. And so that means I have sewn many clothing items. And I wanted to introduce you to a faster method of cutting out your clothes that I thought would make it more enjoyable, because I hear from very many of my students that cutting out is one thing they aren't really enjoying that. So let's figure out a way that you can cut out those patterns faster and easier, and today I'm going to show you that method. So let's start off with the pattern I'm going to use. Those of you who know me, this is one of my favorite tops. It's a Vogue 1550 and Paco, I can't pronounce his last name, so I'm not going to try, but this pattern, this top, I have made multiple times, and I wear this quite frequently out of a variety of different fabrics. So what I've done to make a more permanent pattern for myself is I've traced this pattern onto some newsprint, and that's why you see these kind of an unusual way of looking at your pattern pieces. But this is much sturdier than our tissue paper is, so I do this with a lot of the patterns I really like, and I'm making multiples of them because it's sturdier. I also have my manila envelope. Instead of trying to put all those pattern pieces back in this envelope, I get a manila envelope, an 8.5 by 11, and throw all my pattern pieces into there so that I'm not making a further mess from my pattern pieces. So I've got my front, I've got my back. My fabric is folded onto, this is the fold of my fabric going along this side. This is the salvage edge of my fabric, and this is one of our rayons that we sell. So we've got these laid out, and notice instead of pins on this, I'm using what these are actually pattern weights. And they keep the pattern from curling up. See how that just would fall up like that? I put them on my corners typically, and then I'm all set, ready, see, on these various pieces. And if I feel like I need an extra pattern, sometimes I will use my metal pin bowl to be another one if I need to. Cans of soup will work. You know, you just need something to hold that pattern piece in case somebody walks by and the air flutters, that you don't end up with your pattern flying away on you. I have a very good sharp rotary cutter. And actually for most pattern pieces, if I'm doing something like a top, I can put two of these rotary cutter mats together, the 36-inch length ones. I can put those two together, and I usually use a strip of duct tape underneath of them to hold them together. So now I've got my pattern piece laid out, and I'm going to open up my rotary cutter. The way I use my rotary cutter might be a little different than you do it, but notice that my index finger is on this ridge shape. I use this to guide my rotary cutter, and see my whole hand wraps around the other part of the rotary cutter, thumb and 3 fingers. And I'm not going to put this hand anywhere near where the rotary cutter is, because if I slip, of course I don't want to cut myself, and I don't want you to cut yourself. And what I would recommend the first couple times you do this, go ahead and do a couple of practice pieces so that you can get the motion in line. But think about this. I'm just going to use my arm to go away from me. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to come this way. Now, the hard part, and it really is the hard part, are these little curves. So when you go around a little curve, you've kind of got to get a motion going. And notice how my finger and hand are moving here, and I'm doing that. And I can practice that motion without using my rotary cutter. And what I'm going to do here at the neckline is I'm going to come up rather than coming towards myself, which again can be very dangerous. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go away from myself. See, look at that. And then I can cut across right here, and I can just stop and start. I don't have to go all in one motion around this whole piece. So I can even go, okay, I feel comfortable cutting that little bit, Okay, and so then what I can do is I can use my finger and I can guide it around. And one of the things that I find a lot of times people don't do is they don't put enough pressure on the rotary cutter. You have to put some oomph behind this. So if you can, have the table low enough that what you can do is you can press your body weight into it. And look, I just made a little bit of a mistake. Oh, what a big deal. You know, I can always go back and recut that. That's not any big deal. I can start and stop. There we go. Look at that. But again, part of this is working this easily because I've got a fresh blade in my rotary cutter. So I'm going to come up here, and there we go. And look, it left a little thread. That was the connection of my two rotary cutter mats. So when I pull these back, and I'm showing you how I'm pulling those back, I can go back and very carefully cut that one little thread that was sitting there. So I can have all this fabric out of my way. I can move this back down, and now I'm going to come across, and now what I can do is look, all that fabric's out of my way now, and there isn't anything to get in my way. And notice that I'm doing short parts. I can do the short parts first. Those are usually the easier parts. Now look at that, at that beginning, it did that little one thread. So I've got to come back over here. Another thing that people don't think about is that this is a circle. So I can't start cutting necessarily right here. What I have to do is come back a little bit and then start cutting. And that works usually better. So now I'm going to make this curve motion, and I'm going to come up. And I didn't learn to do that overnight. I had to practice that. It's like any skill set. You need to practice these things. So what I'm doing is I'm going to come along here. And oh, by the way, notice where the rotary cutter is sitting at in my palm. It's actually resting against the heel of my hand, which helps me give some pressure to it. We have another little area where it's connected. All I have to do is use my rotary cutter. There we go. Look at that. Now I have this whole thing all cut apart, and I'm going to take these weights off. And what was that? Maybe 6 minutes to cut the whole thing apart. So there's the back of my top. This is going to be super pretty. You get to, if you come into the shop, you get to see me wearing this. So look at that. And then I have my front. And now I can get to the fun part, and I can start sewing. And we'll probably make another video about that. But I wanted you to see how incredibly simple it is to cut out your clothing pattern pieces with your rotary cutter. And you don't need any rulers, and you just need some practice, and you need to know what some of the techniques were. So hopefully this was helpful. Be careful, and we look forward to seeing you either on our website or here in person at the Tailored Fit. Have a great day, everybody.